You're looking at the most dangerous stretch of ocean in Europe right now, where Norway's navy is shadowing a Russian submarine carrying up to 64 nuclear warheads. Why is this happening here, in Arctic waters, once considered a frozen backwater? Because Russia's newest Borei-A class subs aren't just patrolling, they're tailing Europe's energy lifelines. And NATO knows one misstep could take out a third of the continent's gas supply. In the next few minutes, you'll see the cat-and-mouse game that's forcing military commanders to rethink Arctic strategy entirely. Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Beneath the Arctic ice, a new predator patrols in near silence. It's not the hulking, noisy submarines of the Cold War. This one slips past traditional sonar screens with little trace, forcing NATO analysts to question when it arrived and how many are already out there. The answer lies in Russia's systematic upgrade of its sea-based nuclear forces. Over the last decade, the old Delta-class ballistic missile submarines have been phased out from the high north, replaced by the Borei and improved Borei-A class SSBNs. These vessels are designed for one mission: to remain hidden long enough to guarantee a second strike if nuclear war ever begins. The differences are not subtle. Delta-class boats were detectable at longer ranges, their reactors and machinery generating acoustic signatures that seasoned hunters could identify. Borei designs cut that noise dramatically. New pump jet propulsion, advanced anechoic coatings, and revised hull lines make them far harder to track. Firepower has grown as well. Each Borei carries up to 16 RSM-56 Bulava intercontinental missiles. Every missile can be equipped with multiple warheads, adding up to as many as 64 nuclear warheads on board a single boat during a patrol. These patrol paths are not random. The operating areas often overlap with undersea gas pipelines and fiber optic cables linking Europe to the world. From beneath the ice, the submarines can remain in range of both their nuclear targets and the infrastructure that supports European energy and communications. The coincidence is hard to ignore, especially given when the new deployments began. Their presence increased right after Europe moved to reduce its dependence on Russian pipeline gas, a shift accelerated by the destruction of the Nord Stream lines. One example made its way into shipping reports in recent months. The Knyaz Pożarski, the latest Borei-A hull, sailed from Severodvinsk for sea trials that brushed against areas long regarded as contested waters. There was no violation of territorial boundaries, yet its route forced NATO maritime surveillance assets into extended operations under harsh Arctic conditions. The problem is that even with specialized sensors, ice cover, variable salinity layers, and extreme cold distort acoustic detection, tracking a submarine designed for minimal noise output requires constant effort and coordination across multiple platforms. That strain is now built into NATO's daily operations. Patrol aircraft sweep suspected choke points. Undersea listening stations relay faint detections to command centers. Attack submarines position themselves along likely egress routes. Nothing in the Arctic remains simple when the opponent's most strategic assets are in motion. The arrival of Borei and Borei-A SSBNs has reset the threat model. Quiet patrols that can disappear under the ice for months mean NATO cannot assume it will know when a launch-ready submarine is nearby. But NATO's response wasn't just quiet tracking. It was a visible, public move designed to send its own signal. Picture a Norwegian frigate pacing slowly through gray Arctic waters, radar dishes turning, its hull barely a few miles from a Russian submarine's last known position. Beneath them, the seabed carries more than cold currents. Buried pipelines snake toward Europe, carrying a third of the gas that keeps homes heated and factories running. Above, a maritime patrol aircraft circles at low altitude, its sensors tuned to catch the faintest sign of movement below. This was the setting for Operation IceGuard's debut, a mission announced in daylight, with cameras present as if to ensure Moscow knew it was being watched. Operation IceGuard was developed as a direct countermeasure to the surge in Russian submarine activity in the high north. Norwegian defense officials had noted maneuvers that were harder to predict, more aggressive in their proximity to offshore platforms and cable junction points. In some cases, Russian vessels surfaced suddenly, their periscopes cutting through calm water, just kilometers from restricted zones. NBC News footage from the period showed those brief, unmistakable moments. the dark silhouette of a mast against the sun's glare, a rapid burst of rotor noise as a patrol aircraft banked overhead. The stakes for these patrols were not symbolic. Norway's pipeline network, linked to terminals in the UK and continental Europe, now supplies between 30 and 40% of the EU's imported natural gas. Damage to even one of the main trunk lines could destabilize entire markets within days. Maintaining security meant working not only with naval assets, but also with private energy operators and their undersea monitoring systems. That layered defense combined surface combatants to intercept vessels, P-8 maritime patrol aircraft for wide-area surveillance, and arrays of hydrophones strung along key corridors to detect underwater movement. Yet in many cases, the most critical work was invisible. Attack submarines from NATO navies were tasked to follow the larger ballistic missile subs at a distance, never close enough to trigger conflict, but close enough to maintain a firing solution if ordered. This practice, known as strategic anti-submarine warfare, is one of the most secretive and dangerous forms of patrol, demanding long endurance and extreme discretion from the crews involved. Rear Admiral Rune Anderson spoke openly about the shift in patterns he'd seen, noting that Russian undersea behavior bore little resemblance to what he monitored a decade earlier. More frequent patrols, less adherence to expected routes, and sustained presence near infrastructure forced Norway and its allies to not only increase the number of sorties, but also to make those responses visible. Operation IceGuard was as much a message as a mission. The mix of publicized ship movements, constant air coverage, and heightened patrol schedules was intended to remind Moscow that every submerged departure would be shadowed. Yet behind the patrols lies an even deeper contest, one that's less about geography and more about control over nuclear leverage. In Arctic strategy, a missile's range is only half the story. It's where the launch platform hides that changes everything. The Arctic gives ballistic missile submarines a kind of shield that few other regions can match. Ice cover makes satellite detection almost useless. Water temperatures and shifting salinity layers distort sonar returns. The distances involved mean an SSBN can position itself within range of almost every major target in the Northern Hemisphere, while staying far from land-based threats. For planners in Moscow, that's the definition of survivability. For commanders in NATO, it's a search grid that never stops moving. Borei-A class submarines were built for exactly this environment. Their propulsion allows them to operate at slow speeds without the mechanical noise that gives away older submarines. They can settle under thick ice sheets for weeks, surfacing only when conditions allow a rapid satellite link to the mainland. Even if detected, those locations are difficult for surface ships to reach quickly. That combination of range, stealth, and persistence turns the Arctic basin into a controlled zone for Russia's most valuable strategic weapons. Finding them without creating a crisis is a daily problem for NATO. Push too close, and a shadowing submarine could be mistaken for an attack. Keep too far back, and an SSBN can slip away undisturbed. This is why US, British, and Norwegian attack submarines quietly rotate through northern patrol zones year-round, running what's known as persistent strategic anti-submarine warfare. The mission is simple in wording, but complex in execution. Gain contact, hold it, and wait for orders. In US Navy doctrine, this is the idea of holding an adversary's strategic assets at risk from the undersea, ensuring they know they are never beyond reach. Russia demonstrates its own confidence in these waters. The UMCA 2021 exercises put 3 ballistic missile submarines surfacing through Arctic ice within a few hundred meters of each other, a public display of coordinated under-ice capability. Official footage showed crew drilling in sub-zero conditions, ice breaking from below, and launching torpedoes under thick ice cover. To the untrained eye, it looked routine. To military analysts, it was a reminder that Russia treats the Arctic as a domain for active strategic operations, not just quiet patrols. Despite these tensions, Arctic policy is not a continuous confrontation. Alongside the security maneuvers are agreements on search and rescue, environmental response, and fisheries management. These cooperative structures exist, even while military patrols circle the same waters, underscoring the region's dual identity as both a shared resource and a high-risk security zone. Recently, NATO added to that security side by forming a task force focused on protecting undersea pipelines and communication cables, integrating naval assets, commercial shipping data, and seabed monitoring systems into one network. Russia's submarine modernization means NATO must sustain round-the-clock surveillance for the foreseeable future. This constant presence alters the balance of nuclear deterrence, making the Arctic a live operational theater rather than distant territory. And in that balance lies the answer to why the Arctic, once a frozen periphery, is now a front line in global security. The Arctic is no longer a distant safety buffer. It's now a contested zone where nuclear-armed submarines operate within reach of critical energy lifelines. A single patrol under the ice can alter military planning across continents without surfacing once. That reality ties nuclear deterrence and Europe's energy security together in a way not seen before. Every move in these waters carries both economic and strategic consequences. The question is no longer if the Arctic matters, but how long current boundaries will hold. Watch closely, because the next shift in this undersea contest could change the balance of power overnight.